The Enigma machine sat in its wooden case like a relic of absolute truth. 3 rotors, a plug board, a keyboard and lamp board, 26 letters that could be scrambled into 159 quintillion possible combinations. To the German High Command, it wasn't just encryption. It was mathematical certainty made tangible. When Wehrmacht signals officers opened their daily codebooks each morning, they did so with the calm assurance of men handling an unbreakable system. The ritual was precise. Select the day's rotor order, set the ring positions, configure the plug board connections. 26 steps between a readable message and incomprehensible chaos. And chaos, the Germans believed, was mathematically permanent. Dr. Erich Huttenheim had done the calculations himself. Even if the Allies captured an Enigma machine intact, which seemed impossible given the destruction protocols, they would still face an insurmountable problem. Without the daily keys distributed in water-soluble codebooks, they would need to test every possible configuration. The mathematics were brutal. Millions of rotor positions, billions of plug board combinations, quintillions of total settings. Testing them manually would require more time than the universe had existed. Testing them mechanically would require computing power that simply didn't exist in 1939. The Kriegsmarine took additional precautions that elevated confidence into absolute faith. Codebooks were printed in red ink on pink paper designed to dissolve in seawater within 30 seconds. Weighted bags ensured they would sink immediately. U-boat commanders carried standing orders to shoot any crew member who failed to destroy cryptographic materials before capture. In February 1942, the Navy introduced the M4 Enigma, a 4-rotor variant that multiplied complexity by a factor of 26. When German cryptographers tested it using every known code-breaking technique, they failed completely. The assessment went directly to Admiral Dönitz, unbreakable. This wasn't arrogance, it was mathematics. What the Germans never considered was that mathematics alone doesn't win wars. Humans operate the machines, and humans are predictable. The weather officer who sent the same formatted report at 0600 every morning. The radio operator who reused yesterday's message key because changing rotors was tedious after a 16-hour watch. The logistics commander whose supply requisitions followed identical templates. The captain who always ended transmissions with Heil Hitler because political correctness mattered even at sea. Before we continue, click that subscribe button, like this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It brings me great joy knowing that these war stories and lessons get to people all over the world. Your support helps us bring more thrilling war stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get back to the story. Every repeated phrase was a crack in the foundation. Every predictable format was a doorway. Every lazy shortcut was an invitation. And in silent rooms across Britain, mathematicians were walking through those doors. The Germans would investigate radar, spies, traitors, captured documents, infrared detection, clairvoyance, everything except the truth staring them in the face. Because the most dangerous enemy isn't the one you can see. It's the one you're certain doesn't exist. And certainty, as 30,000 German submariners would learn, drowns just as surely as the Atlantic. The breakthrough began not with British genius, but with Polish desperation. Warsaw. The Polish Cipher Bureau faced an existential problem. Germany was rearming, and every intercepted German military transmission was incomprehensible gibberish. The Enigma machine, originally designed for commercial use, had been adopted by the Reichswehr and transformed into a military encryption standard. Poland knew what was coming. Trapped between Germany and the Soviet Union, they understood that survival meant knowing their enemy's intentions before orders reached the front lines. But breaking Enigma seemed impossible. The Polish approach was unconventional. Instead of recruiting linguists or military intelligence officers, they turned to mathematicians. Three young men from Poznan University, Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski, were handed stacks of intercepted German messages and a simple directive: make sense of this. Rejewski discovered the vulnerability within months. German radio operators were required to transmit a three-letter message key at the beginning of each transmission, encrypted twice for verification. This double encryption, meant to prevent transmission errors, created a mathematical pattern. The same letter encrypted twice in succession created relationships that could be mapped, analyzed, exploited. It was a procedural flea, not a mechanical one. The Enigma machine itself remained mathematically sound. But humans operating the machine had introduced predictability into an otherwise random system. By 1933, Rejewski had reconstructed the internal wiring of the Enigma rotors without ever seeing a German military machine. Using pure mathematics and intercepted messages, he reverse-engineered the system Germany believed was impenetrable. The Poles began reading German military traffic. For 6 years, Polish cryptanalysts maintained their advantage in silence. They developed mechanical aids, the bomba kryptologiczna, that automated the testing of rotor positions. They created perforated sheets that revealed daily keys through pattern matching. They read German Army and Air Force communications with systematic efficiency. But in 1938, Germany changed the game. The Wehrmacht expanded from 3 rotors to 5, increasing the number of possible rotor combinations from 6 to 60. The mathematical complexity multiplied tenfold overnight. The Polish bomba machines, designed for the old system, became obsolete. Resources to build 60 new machines didn't exist. Poland faced invasion, and the cipher advantage was slipping away. July 1939. 5 weeks before Germany would cross the Polish border, 3 Polish cryptanalysts met with French and British intelligence officers in a secret conference outside Warsaw. What happened in that room would change the war. The Poles handed over everything: reconstructed Enigma rotor wirings, the double encryption vulnerability, bomba schematics, perforated sheets, 6 years of cryptanalytic methodology. They gave the Allies a weapon. They just didn't know if it would arrive in time. 6 weeks later, German tanks rolled into Poland. Rejewski, Różycki, and Zygalski fled to France, then Britain, carrying the knowledge that would help destroy the regime that had driven them from their homeland. The foundation was laid. Now Britain had to build on it. Bletchley Park looked nothing like a weapons facility. 50 miles north of London, the Victorian mansion and its hastily constructed wooden huts resembled a bureaucratic backwater more than the nerve center of Britain's intelligence war. Yet by 1943, over 9,000 personnel worked within its barbed wire perimeter, operating in total secrecy under penalties that included execution for disclosure. They were fighting a war Germany didn't know existed. When the Polish cryptanalysts' work reached Britain in August 1939, the Government Code and Cipher School relocated to Bletchley Park and began recruiting. The profile was unconventional: mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, crossword experts, anyone capable of seeing patterns where others saw chaos. Alan Turing arrived in September 1939. A Cambridge mathematician with little interest in military protocol, he immediately grasped what the Polish breakthrough meant. Enigma could be broken, but not by humans alone. The daily key changes meant starting from 0 every midnight. Manual analysis would take weeks. By then, the intelligence would be worthless. Turing needed machines. By March 1940, the first bomb, bomb, was operational. A 6-foot-tall electromechanical computer named Victory. It wasn't a computer in the modern sense, but a mechanical logic engine that could test thousands of rotor positions per hour. Where humans saw randomness, the bomb found patterns. But patterns required footholds. Enter Gordon Welchman, who revolutionized the process with a single insight. German messages weren't random. Weather reports followed identical formats. Convoy positions used standardized coordinates. Supply requisitions contained predictable text. These repeated elements, cribs in cryptanalytic terminology, gave the bombs starting points. The system scaled rapidly. By 1942, Bletchley Park operated 50 bombs. By 1944, over 200. Each machine clattered day and night, rotors spinning, testing configurations, hunting for the day's keys. When a bomb stopped, operators rushed to check. Had it found the setting? The operation was compartmentalized to the point of paranoia. Hut 6 broke German Army and Air Force Enigma. Hut 8 focused on naval Enigma. Hut 3 translated and analyzed decrypted Army messages. Hut 4 handled naval intelligence. Personnel in one hut often had no idea what adjacent huts were doing. No one saw the complete picture except a handful of senior officers. What they saw was omniscience. By 1943, Bletchley Park was processing over 3,000 messages daily. U-boat positions, Luftwaffe strength reports, Wehrmacht supply routes, Rommel's tactical plans, convoy intercept orders. Everything flowing through Enigma was laid bare within hours. The intelligence code name was Ultra, higher classification than Top Secret, distributed only to commanders cleared for access. Churchill called Bletchley Park the goose that laid the golden eggs but never cackled. The silence was enforced with ruthless efficiency. Personnel who completed service were forbidden from discussing their work for decades. No diaries, no hints to family, no recognition. Thousands of young women operated bombs, translated messages, analyzed traffic patterns, and disappeared into history without acknowledgement. Germany investigated radar, spies, traitors, everything. They never imagined an army of mathematicians reading their thoughts in real time. The mathematics were perfect. The humans operating them were not. Every morning at precisely 0600 hours, German weather stations transmitted meteorological reports to coordinate Luftwaffe operations. The format never varied. Wind speed, direction, barometric pressure, cloud cover, visibility. The phrasing was identical, day after day, station after station. At Bletchley Park, cryptanalysts called these messages Wetterfunkgerät, weather cribs. They were gifts because the Allies knew exactly what the encrypted message would say. They knew it would begin with Wettervorhersage, weather forecast. They knew it would contain Bewölkung, cloud cover, and standard abbreviations. This predictable text gave the bombs a starting point. Test configurations until these known German words appeared in the decryption. One weather report could unlock an entire day's Enigma key. Once broken, every German message encrypted with that day's settings became readable. But weather reports were just the beginning. German radio operators developed habits that would have horrified their security officers. Many reused the same three-letter message key repeatedly because changing rotor positions was tedious. Others chose obvious combinations, AAA, ABC, or their girlfriend's initials. Some simply used the previous message's final three letters as the next message's key. Bletchley Park cataloged these patterns with clinical precision. Then there were the procedural requirements that became vulnerabilities. German military culture demanded specific message formatting. Supply officers used standardized requisition templates. Convoy reports followed identical coordinate notation. Messages to higher command always included proper military courtesy, ranks, titles, formal address. Most devastating, the requirement that important messages end with Heil Hitler, Every message closing with those 10 letters gave cryptanalysts a guaranteed crib. The Führer's name, meant to demonstrate loyalty, instead handed the Allies a skeleton key. The most predictable messages came from the Kriegsmarine. U-boats surfacing to recharge batteries transmitted position reports using compressed Kurzsignal, short signals, from standardized code books. These messages followed rigid formats: grid coordinates, fuel status, operational readiness. Once Bletchley Park acquired the short signal books through U-boat captures, they could predict message content before decryption. One U-boat commander unwittingly provided a masterclass in cryptographic failure. Every message he sent concluded with the same personalized sign-off, a habit that allowed Bletchley Park to identify his transmissions instantly and use them as cribs for breaking daily keys. German operators also made a fatal assumption. If the encrypted text looked random, it must be secure. They never considered that patterns in encryption choices could be just as revealing as the messages themselves. The tragedy was that German cryptographic doctrine had anticipated these vulnerabilities. Training manuals explicitly warned against reusing keys, predictable message formats, and repeated phrases. Security protocols demanded variation in transmission patterns. But protocols written in Berlin meant nothing to an exhausted radio operator on a frozen Eastern Front position, or a U-boat communications officer working 18-hour shifts in the North Atlantic, or a Luftwaffe signals clerk processing hundreds of messages daily. Humans cut corners. Humans developed routines. Humans prioritized efficiency over paranoia. And every shortcut was a crack the Allies exploited with mechanical precision. The Wolfpack never had a chance. March 1943, convoy HX-229 steamed eastward across the North Atlantic, carrying vital supplies to Britain. U-boat headquarters in Berlin, monitoring Allied radio traffic, identified the convoy's position and assembled 40 U-boats into 3 coordinated Wolfpacks: Raubgraf, Stürmer, and Dränger. It should have been a massacre. 40 submarines converging on a single convoy represented the largest concentrated U-boat operation of the war. Admiral Dönitz transmitted detailed intercept coordinates, attack timing, and tactical formations. What Dönitz didn't know, Bletchley Park was reading every order within hours of transmission. The submarine tracking room in London, a converted Admiralty basement operated by Commander Roger Wynne, plotted U-boat positions on massive wall charts using ultra-intelligence. Every transmission from Berlin to the Wolfpacks revealed submarine locations, fuel status, torpedo loads, operational readiness. The Allies knew where the U-boats were before the U-boat commanders knew where they were going. Convoy routing officers rerouted HX-229 around the Wolfpack concentrations. Hunter-killer groups, destroyer escorts equipped with depth charges and hedgehog mortars, were vectored directly to U-boat positions. The hunters became the hunted. The pattern repeated across the Atlantic. Convoys evaded Wolfpacks with impossible precision. U-boats surfacing to recharge batteries found destroyers waiting. Supply submarines attempting to refuel boats in remote ocean sectors were intercepted and destroyed before making contact. May 1943 became Black May for the Kriegsmarine. 41 U-boats destroyed in 30 days. Losses Germany couldn't sustain. Dönitz pulled his submarines from the North Atlantic entirely, conceding the most critical theater of the war. In his war diary, the admiral wrote with bitter confusion, "The enemy has achieved astonishing success. For some months past, the enemy has been able to locate boats with precision and attack them with destroyers and aircraft." He suspected radar. He blamed Allied technological superiority. He ordered investigations into detection equipment. He never suspected his own encryption system. The cruelest irony: German submariners died transmitting the information that killed them. Every position report, every contact message, every tactical update was read by the enemy and used to orchestrate their destruction. U-boats requesting fuel coordinates transmitted their exact locations to British hunter-killer groups. Submarines reporting convoy sightings revealed their positions and allowed convoys to be rerouted away. The Germans even intercepted British convoy routing messages encrypted with their own systems, not realizing the Allies were using captured Enigma machines to transmit deliberately misleading information, creating a feedback loop of deception. 30,000 German submariners died in the Atlantic. The majority drowned in waters where their positions were known, their movements predicted, their tactical intentions transparent to an enemy reading their commander's thoughts in real time. One U-boat officer, captured after his submarine was destroyed, told his interrogators with exhausted conviction, "You have radar that can see through fog and darkness. There is no other explanation." The interrogators said nothing. The truth would remain classified for another 30 years. Ultra didn't just win battles, it shaped entire campaigns. North Africa, 1942. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel transmitted daily situation reports to Berlin detailing fuel shortages, ammunition levels, troop dispositions, and tactical intentions. Every message was encrypted with Enigma. Every message was read at Bletchley Park within hours. General Bernard Montgomery received ultra summaries before launching the Second Battle of El Alamein in October 1942. He knew Rommel's tank strength, supply situation, defensive positions, and reinforcement schedules. When Rommel attempted tactical feints, Montgomery ignored them. He'd already read the real attack plans. The German Afrika Korps fought brilliantly with inferior resources. But brilliance meant nothing when the enemy knew your fuel reserves, your ammunition shortages, your exact defensive weaknesses. Montgomery defeated Rommel not through superior generalship, but through perfect intelligence. After the war, Rommel's widow would insist her husband lost because of Allied material superiority. The truth, he lost because his daily reports to Berlin were an open book. Normandy, 1944. The greatest deception operation in military history succeeded because the Allies knew exactly what Germany believed. Operation Fortitude, the elaborate plan to convince Hitler that D-Day would strike Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy, worked because Ultra revealed German intelligence assessments in real time. Bletchley Park decrypted Wehrmacht situation reports, showing which deception elements Germany had accepted as truth. When Hitler kept 17 divisions in Pas-de-Calais for weeks after D-Day, waiting for the real invasion, he did so based on intelligence the Allies had carefully fed him through double agents. Ultra confirmed the deception was working before the first soldier landed on Omaha Beach. The German 15th Army, positioned exactly where the Allies wanted it, sat idle while American and British forces established the Normandy beachhead. By the time Hitler realized the truth, the window for a decisive counterattack had closed. The Eastern Front. Stalin received ultra-intelligence through an elaborate deception called the Lucy Ring, a supposed Swiss-based spy network that was actually a British intelligence laundering operation. The Soviets, paranoid and distrustful, refused to believe Britain would share intelligence freely. So Britain invented a spy network and fed them German battle plans, troop movements, and offensive preparations through Switzerland. Before Operation Citadel, the massive German offensive at Kursk in July 1943, Stalin knew the exact date, location, and force composition of the German attack. Soviet defenses were prepared in depth with minefields, anti-tank positions, and reserves positioned precisely where German armor would concentrate. The largest tank battle in history was won before it began, because the defender knew everything the attacker planned. Ultra gave the Allies something no military in history had possessed: strategic omniscience. Not perfect. Enigma didn't encrypt everything, and some messages were never intercepted or decrypted in time, but comprehensive enough to shift the fundamental balance of the war. Germany fought brilliantly, bravely, desperately, but they fought blind against an enemy who could read their thoughts. They investigated everything except the truth. Between 1941 and 1945, German naval intelligence launched at least 15 major security investigations into unexplained Allied successes. Each inquiry was thorough, methodical, staffed with experienced intelligence officers. Each reached the same conclusion: Enigma remained secure. The U-110 blindness, May 1941. When U-110 failed to return from patrol, Captain Ludwig Stummel of the B-Dienst investigated potential security breaches. His report acknowledged the theoretical possibility that the submarine had been captured intact with cryptographic materials, but dismissed this as acute disquiet that cannot be justified. His reasoning: even if the British possessed the machine and current keys, they would lose access when the keys changed on June 1st. Furthermore, proper protocol demanded destruction of all materials, and it must be assumed the crew fulfilled their duty. What Stummel didn't know, HMS Bulldog's boarding party had found U-110's radio room completely intact. Codebooks lay open on the table. The Enigma machine was still warm. The submarine's crew, panicked by the rapid surfacing, had abandoned ship without destroying anything. The British now possessed not just a machine, but operating procedures, short signal books, and officer-only encryption keys. Stummel investigated everything around the incident. He never considered the incident itself. Black May investigation. Spring 1943. 41 U-boats destroyed in a single month demanded answers. Admiral Dönitz ordered the most comprehensive security review of the war, led by Korvettenkapitän Meckel. The investigation explored multiple theories with impressive thoroughness. Theory 1. Metox radar warning receivers were re-radiating signals that betrayed submarine positions. A Focke-Wulf Condor aircraft confirmed Metox emissions could be detected at 110 kilometers. All U-boats immediately ceased using radar detection equipment. Losses continued. Theory 2. Allied infrared detection systems were spotting diesel engine heat signatures. German naval technical departments developed special infrared-absorbing paint. U-boats were hastily repainted with experimental coatings. Losses continued. Theory 3. British radar had achieved impossible ranges, 60 nautical miles or more. German scientists theorized centimetric radar breakthroughs despite their own experts declaring such technology years away. Theory 4. Interrogation drugs extracted operational secrets from captured submariners. Enhanced resistance training was mandated for all crews. Theory 5. Spies had penetrated Kriegsmarine headquarters in Berlin or Paris. Counterintelligence investigations expanded. Dozens were questioned. Security protocols tightened. Every theory was explored. Every hypothesis tested. Every alternative explanation pursued with German thoroughness. Except one. When subordinates tentatively suggested Enigma compromise, the response was immediate and crushing. Mathematically impossible. Our own cryptographers have confirmed this repeatedly. The final absurdity. In late 1943, B-Dienst analysts noted that British convoy routing appeared to avoid known U-boat positions with supernatural precision. Their conclusion: the British had developed aircraft-mounted radar capable of detecting submarines from such extreme ranges that entire ocean sectors could be surveyed. The real explanation was simpler. Bletchley Park read the U-boat position reports and routed convoys accordingly. But simplicity required admitting the unthinkable. German military culture, built on technical excellence and mathematical certainty, couldn't conceive that their perfect machine had been broken by enemy mathematicians. So they blamed radar. technology, luck, anything but their own blind faith. The intelligence was worthless if Germany discovered it existed. Every ultra-decrypt came with an unspoken calculation. Can we act on this without revealing our source? British intelligence developed an entire apparatus dedicated not to using ultra, but to concealing it. The doctrine was called Special Intelligence Procedures, and it was enforced with paranoid intensity. Rule 1. Never act on ultra-intelligence alone. Every operation based on decrypted messages required a cover story, reconnaissance aircraft, coast watchers, supposed spy networks, radar detection, direction-finding equipment. The paperwork had to be perfect. If a convoy was rerouted because Ultra revealed a U-boat wolfpack, official records showed an air reconnaissance sighting at precisely the coordinates where submarines were known to be. Rule 2. Sometimes let the enemy win. If acting on intelligence would expose the source, the intelligence was ignored. Convoys sailed into known ambushes. Bombing raids proceeded despite advance warning. Ships were sacrificed to protect the secret that could win the war. Churchill faced this calculus in November 1940 when ultra-decrypts revealed Luftwaffe plans to bomb Coventry. Acting decisively would save lives but risk exposing Ultra. The compromise: limited defensive measures that appeared routine, allowing the raid to proceed while subtly positioning resources for damage control. Rule 3. Create phantom intelligence sources. The Lucy Ring, feeding ultra-intelligence to Stalin through Switzerland, was entirely fabricated, a spy network that existed only in Soviet intelligence reports. Britain couldn't simply hand Stalin German battle plans. Soviet paranoia demanded a convincing espionage narrative. Double agents, captured German spies turned by MI5, were fed carefully sanitized ultra-intelligence and allowed to transmit it to Germany as if they'd acquired it through espionage. This created a feedback loop. Germany received accurate intelligence about Allied movements, actually derived from their own captured transmissions, which reinforced German confidence that their spies were effective, while simultaneously making ultra-derived intelligence appear to come from conventional espionage. Rule 4. Compartmentalization beyond reason. Field commanders received ultra-intelligence through special liaison units. Intelligence officers who delivered sealed messages waited while they were read, then immediately destroyed the documents. No copies, no records, no discussion outside secure facilities. Generals couldn't tell their own staff where intelligence originated. Rule 5. Accept casualties to maintain deception. When U-559 was sinking in October 1942, with an M4 Enigma codebook still aboard, 2 British sailors dove into the flooding submarine to retrieve it. Both drowned when the submarine went down. Their sacrifice gave Bletchley Park the keys to break naval Enigma. Their deaths were recorded as lost at sea during routine operations. The secrecy extended decades beyond the war. Personnel who worked at Bletchley Park were forbidden from discussing their service until the mid-1970s. Thousands of young women who operated bombs, translated messages, and analyzed traffic patterns went to their graves without recognition. The machinery of deception was so effective that when Germany finally learned the truth in 1974, former intelligence officers insisted it must be exaggerated. Surely not everything was compromised. But it was, and the silence had been perfect. They died without knowing why. The mathematics of U-boat warfare were brutal. Of the 40,000 men who served in the Kriegsmarine submarine force during World War II, 30,000 never came home, a 75% fatality rate, the highest of any military branch in any nation during the war. They died in the North Atlantic, the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean. They died when depth charges ruptured pressure hulls at 200 meters depth, when hedgehog mortars detonated against conning towers, when aircraft dropped torpedoes found them surfacing to recharge batteries. They died believing they were fighting against superior Allied technology. Better radar, faster aircraft, more destroyers, overwhelming industrial capacity. The truth was simpler and more devastating. They died because their commander's orders were read by the enemy before the orders reached them. The human cost of blindness U-boat service was already one of the most dangerous assignments in military history. Submariners operated in steel tubes under crushing ocean pressure, breathing recycled air thick with diesel fumes and human sweat. Patrols lasted months. Food spoiled. Fresh water ran low. Mechanical failures could be fatal hundreds of miles from any port. But those were acceptable risks to men who believed they were fighting on equal terms. What they couldn't accept, what they never knew, was that the fight was never equal. Every tactical advantage Dönitz developed was countered before it reached operational status because the Allies read the tactical directives. Every new operational area was compromised the moment Berlin transmitted the coordinates. Every Wolfpack assembly point was known to the enemy before the first submarine arrived. The submariners called themselves the Grey Wolves. They developed a dark pride in their survival rates, a fatalistic courage born from knowing that statistically, most of them would die. But that courage was built on the assumption they were fighting against odds that could be overcome through skill, bravery, and luck. Ultra stripped away all three. The survivors' realization. When the surviving U-boat officers learned the truth decades later, the psychological impact was profound. Hans Rudolf Rosing, who commanded U-boat forces in the Baltic, said simply, "We were sending our men to die based on orders the enemy had already read." Reinhard Hartigan, one of Germany's most successful U-boat aces, reflected, "I had always believed the crew losses were the price of warfare. To learn they were the price of our own blindness. That is a different calculation entirely." The cruelest aspect, many submariners died transmitting their own death warrants. Position reports required by headquarters revealed their locations to Allied hunter-killer groups. Contact messages reporting convoy sightings allowed those convoys to be diverted. Fuel status updates guided destroyers to submarines low on battery power, unable to dive or maneuver effectively. Every message sent was a message read. Every order followed was an order exploited. 30,000 men went to the bottom of the Atlantic believing they were warriors. They were actually test subjects in a cryptographic experiment they never knew they were part of. Darmstadt, West Germany. Admiral Karl Dönitz closed the ultra-secret and sat motionless at his desk. His aide, who had spent the afternoon translating the English text, later reported that the old man said nothing for nearly 10 minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. So that's how they did it. Not anger, not disbelief, just the exhausted recognition of a truth that had taken 30 years to surface. For 3 decades, Dönitz had constructed explanations. Allied radar had been superior. American industrial capacity had been overwhelming. British reconnaissance had been relentless. He'd written extensively about these factors, analyzing the Battle of the Atlantic with the detachment of a military historian dissecting a campaign he hadn't personally commanded. Page 117 of Frederick Winterbotham's memoir destroyed every explanation. The Allies hadn't defeated Germany through material superiority alone. They'd defeated Germany by reading every order, every tactical directive, every operational plan transmitted through Enigma. The encryption system Germany had defended with absolute mathematical certainty had been compromised almost from the war's beginning. Dönitz drafted a letter to the publisher. "I had always suspected this," he wrote, a defensive rationalization that those who knew him recognized as false. Throughout the war, whenever subordinates raised security concerns, Dönitz had dismissed them with crushing finality. Enigma cannot be broken. He'd believed it. They'd all believed it. The cost of certainty. In quiet moments during his final years, Dönitz would reflect on the numbers. 783 U-boats lost, 30,000 submariners dead, the Battle of the Atlantic conceded. And all of it, every tactical defeat, every intercepted convoy, every submarine hunted down in impossible ocean expanses, traceable to a single assumption. The machine was mathematically unbreakable. Therefore, the machine was secure. The mathematics had been correct. But mathematics didn't account for lazy radio operators reusing message keys, for weather officers transmitting identical formatted reports every morning, for commanders whose procedural habits became patterns, for the simple human tendency to choose convenience over paranoia. The Allies hadn't beaten German mathematics. They'd beaten German certainty. The final lesson other German commanders learned the truth in the 1970s with similar devastation. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, who had commanded forces in Italy, realized his tactical movements had been anticipated because his orders to subordinate units were read in real time. Luftwaffe officers understood why their airfields were bombed with such precision. Flight plans and fuel reports had been transparent. The pattern was universal: shock, denial, reluctant acceptance, then the haunting question: how different would the war have been if we'd known? The answer was unknowable, but one truth remained clear. Germany hadn't lost World War II solely because of Allied strength, Soviet determination, or American industrial might. They'd lost because they placed absolute faith in a system whose security depended on human perfection. And humans are never perfect. Dönitz died in 1980, 6 years after learning the truth. In his final interviews, he never again claimed Enigma was unbreakable. Certainty had taught him otherwise. The silence lasted 30 years. When World War II ended in May 1945, the ultra-secret remained locked in classified vaults. Winston Churchill personally ordered all evidence of Bletchley Park's cryptanalytic operations sealed. Bombs were dismantled. Documents were burned. Personnel were reminded that their secrecy oaths remained in force indefinitely. The reason? Enigma machines were still in use. After Germany's surrender, Allied intelligence discovered that dozens of nations had acquired surplus Enigma machines and were using them for their own communications, believing the encryption remained secure. Former German allies, newly independent nations, even some countries in the developing world adopted Enigma for military and diplomatic traffic. Britain and America said nothing. For decades, they continued reading communications from nations who trusted a compromised system. The public revelation. The secret finally broke in 1974 when Group Captain Frederick Winterbotham, an RAF intelligence officer who had overseen Ultra distribution during the war, published The Ultra Secret. The memoir revealed Bletchley Park's existence and the scope of Allied cryptanalytic success. The response was immediate and profound. Military historians realized entire campaigns needed reassessment. Montgomery's victory at El Alamein wasn't purely tactical brilliance. He'd known Rommel's exact dispositions. The Battle of the Atlantic wasn't won solely by escort carriers and improved radar. Convoy routing had been based on reading U-boat orders. D-Day's success wasn't just due to Operation Fortitude's deception. Ultra had confirmed Germany believed the deception. German officers, now elderly men scattered across Europe, learned that the war they remembered had been fundamentally different than the war they'd actually fought. They'd been fighting blind against an enemy with perfect vision. The historical impact. Historians now estimate Ultra shortened the war by 2 to 4 years. Every month of continued conflict meant millions more dead. Soldiers, civilians, Holocaust victims. The intelligence advantage didn't just win battles, it saved lives by ending the war faster. But the calculation included brutal trade-offs. Convoys were sometimes allowed to be attacked when acting on ultra-intelligence, would expose the source. Cities were bombed when advance warning might reveal Allied capabilities. The Allies accepted casualties to protect the secret that could prevent greater casualties. The human legacy. The thousands who worked at Bletchley Park carried the secret for decades. Wives who operated bombs never told husbands what they'd done during the war. Mathematicians who broke Enigma became school teachers, clerks, librarians, anonymous in peacetime, their contributions unknown. Alan Turing, whose mathematical insights made ultra possible, died in 1954 without public recognition. His role remained classified, his genius unacknowledged, his contributions to ending the war unknown outside intelligence circles. When the truth emerged in the 1970s, many Bletchley Park veterans were already dead. They'd lived entire post-war lives unable to discuss the most significant work they'd ever done. The lesson ultra proved that information could be as decisive as firepower. That intelligence, properly used, could reshape entire wars. That human predictability could undermine mathematical perfection. And that certainty, absolute, unshakable certainty in any system, was the most dangerous vulnerability of all. They could pinpoint the exact moment they knew. Decades after the war, in scattered interviews and memoirs, German intelligence officers would reflect on when they should have realized Enigma was compromised. Not when they learned the truth in 1974, but when the evidence had been staring them in the face during the war itself. The moment for Captain Ludwig Stummel of the B-Dienst. It was spring 1941. 7 supply ships destroyed in 3 months, positioned in remote Atlantic sectors where discovery by random patrol was statistically impossible. The probability calculations were undeniable. Yet he'd written, "An insight into our cipher does not come into consideration." For Admiral Dönitz, it should have been May 1943. 41 U-boats destroyed in a single month. Convoys evading wolfpacks with precision that defied every conventional explanation. But he'd blamed radar, technology, Allied resources, everything except the machine he'd defended with absolute faith. For Dr. Erich Huttenhahn, chief Wehrmacht cryptographer, it might have been the interrogation reports from captured Allied personnel who knew too much about German operations, displayed too much confidence in their intelligence superiority. But German calculations showed Enigma compromise was mathematically impractical. The calculations were correct. The assumption was fatal. The survivor's reflection, Hans Rudolf Rosing, Baltic U-boat commander. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. We simply refused to see them because we'd been told seeing them was impossible. Reinhard Hardagen, U-boat ace. I remember telling my crew that the British had developed radar that could see through storms and darkness. That explanation seemed more reasonable than admitting our command was sending us to die with compromised communications. We chose the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth. Wilhelm Doms, another senior U-boat officer. The most damning evidence was our own success rate. Early in the war, we were devastatingly effective. Then, almost overnight, convoys began evading us with uncanny precision. Something fundamental had changed. We investigated everything except the most obvious explanation. The cost of chosen blindness. German military culture, built on technical excellence and engineering precision, couldn't conceive that their mathematically perfect system had been broken through mathematical analysis. The encryption was unbreakable. Therefore, it must remain unbroken. The logic was circular and fatal. They'd investigated radar ranges that violated physics, interrogation drugs that didn't exist, spy networks of impossible scope, infrared detection systems beyond contemporary technology. Every explanation, no matter how implausible, was more acceptable than questioning the foundation of their communications security. 30,000 submariners paid for that certainty with their lives. The final understanding. When Dönitz closed the ultra-secret in 1974, he understood something that transcended military history. The most dangerous enemy isn't superior firepower or greater numbers. It's the certainty that your own systems are invulnerable. Germany had possessed brilliant commanders, brave soldiers, sophisticated technology, and tactical innovation. What they lacked was the intellectual humility to question their own assumptions when evidence contradicted them. The Allies won the intelligence war not because they were smarter, but because they were willing to attempt what German mathematicians had calculated was impossible. Certainty killed more Germans than Allied guns. And the moment that certainty should have died was the moment they chose to ignore the evidence in front of them.